Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming out. We have at least 19 members of Congress who will be introducing today a 12-page House resolution detailing misconduct at the highest levels of the Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation. It will be outlining FISA abuse, how and why the Hillary Clinton email probe ended, and how and why the Trump-Russia probe began. This resolution also calls for the appointment of a second special counsel to investigate the gross misconduct, with the understanding that the Justice Department cannot be expected to investigate itself. It's very important to note that the ranks of the DOJ and FBI are filled with amazing, patriotic Americans who love their job, take their oaths seriously, and perform their jobs objectively with much respect for the rule of law. These are historic, legendary agencies that require transparency and accountability regarding the misconduct that took place. It is important for these exceptional public servants and these important agencies to continue their work moving forward stronger than ever before. As the resolution states, the concerns of the American people are serious, and the issues requiring an immediate, unbiased, independent, and thorough investigation are broad. In just the past few days, we learned that the DOJ, FBI, or both, appeared to have planted at least one person into Donald Trump's presidential campaign to infiltrate and surveil the campaign. This action alone reminds us of just how necessary this resolution is, as well as the appointment of a second special counsel. First, we will discuss some of the misconduct related to how and why the Hillary Clinton email probe ended. Then we will get into details related to the FISA abuse that took place. And finally, we will discuss the misconduct with regards to how and why the Donald Trump-Russia probe began. With regards to Secretary Clinton, federal law and State Department rules, regulations, and protocol were violated with her use of a private email server in her Chappaqua, New York home. Official communications were transmitted on an unsecured server and included emails that contained classified information when they were sent, in addition to other emails which were retroactively deemed classified by the Department of State. Former FBI Director James Comey has acknowledged that 65 of these illicit emails were classified as secret and 22 were classified as top secret. There is significant evidence that the use of this private server by Secretary Clinton was meant to avoid compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, 5 U.S.C. 552, and done to obstruct justice by not having to turn over incriminating emails in the case of a subpoena. Various sensitive emails subject to grand jury and congressional subpoenas were destroyed on Secretary Clinton's private server through the use of BleachBit software and the destruction of hardware before they could be obtained by investigators in March 2015. In a September 2015 meeting between then Attorney General Loretta Lynch and then Director Comey, the Attorney General instructed Director Comey to refer to the Clinton email investigation as a matter, thus watering down the severity of the investigation and aligning the Justice Department's rhetoric with the messaging of the Clinton campaign. Cheryl Mills, who served as counselor and chief of staff to Hillary Clinton during her tenure as Secretary of State, was offered immunity from prosecution in exchange for access to her laptop that contained many of the questionable emails. According to transcripts obtained by the Senate Judiciary Committee, former Director Comey was prepared to exonerate Hillary Clinton as early as April or May of 2016 when he began to draft a statement announcing the end of his investigation before up to 17 key witnesses, including Secretary Clinton herself and several of her closest aides, were even interviewed. Comey contradicted these transcripts when he stated during sworn testimony before the House Judiciary Committee on September 28, 2016, that he made the decision not to recommend criminal charges for Secretary Clinton after she was interviewed by the FBI on July 2, 2016. Director Comey, in the final draft of his statement, allowed FBI agent Peter Strzok to replace grossly negligent, which is legally punishable under federal law, with extremely careless, which is not legally punishable under federal law. Federal law states gross negligence in handling the nation's intelligence can be punished criminally with prison time or fines. There's also the June 27, 2016 infamous meeting between A.G. Lynch and former President Bill Clinton aboard her plane on the tarmac in Phoenix, Arizona. Immediately thereafter, Hillary Clinton was exonerated. On July 5, 2016, Director Comey violated DOJ rules and unilaterally exonerated then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton in a public statement to the media. One day later, on July 6th of 2016, an announcement followed from A.G. Lynch that the DOJ investigation into then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton would be formally closed with no charges. In September 2016, the FBI, during examination of the personal laptop of former Congressman Anthony Weiner as part of an unrelated investigation into him sending sexually explicit messages to a teenage girl discovered previously unexamined Department of State classified emails belonging to his spouse, top Clinton aide Huma Abedin. It took until October 28th of 2016 for Director Comey to announce via a letter to the chairs of the relevant congressional committees that he was reopening the investigation to Hillary Clinton, an additional egregious delay after the FBI failed to even examine the illicit emails after the FBI discovered them on Anthony Weiner's computer. FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe's wife, Dr. Jill McCabe, was running for Virginia State Senate at the time, and as of October 26th, had received $675,000 in donations from the Virginia Democratic Party and Common Good VA, the leadership PAC controlled by Democratic Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, a longtime Clinton associate. An investigation conducted by the Office of the DOJ Inspector General noted that on October 27th of 2016, Director Comey required that Deputy Director McCabe remove himself from a conference call regarding the Clinton emails discovered on Anthony Weiner's laptop to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest after media reports surfaced noting those questionable political donations. Further investigation to whether then FBI Deputy Director McCabe and other FBI officials sought to purposely delay the release of these illicit emails for politically motivated purposes is warranted. Throughout the Obama administration, the DOJ failed to fully investigate serious concerns surrounding former President Clinton, then Secretary of State Clinton, and the Clinton Foundation's connection to the Russian company Uranium One, which received Department of State approval to purchase U.S. uranium mines in 2010. Throughout Hillary Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State, a family foundation controlled by the chairman of Uranium One made $2,350,000 in contributions to the Clinton Foundation, which were not publicly disclosed, in violation of an agreement Secretary Clinton had with the Obama White House to publicly identify all donors. In 2010, while Russian state interests were working to both acquire a majority stake in Uranium One and to purchase American mines, Bill Clinton was paid $500,000 for a speech in Moscow by a Kremlin-linked Russian investment bank that was underwriting Uranium One stock. A confidential informant who worked with the FBI to uncover bribery and other corruption related to the Uranium One matter was threatened with reprisal by the Justice Department under A.G. Lynch when he tried to come forward in 2016. The Senate Judiciary Committee launched a probe in October 2017 to investigate the Uranium One matter, including whether federal departments and agencies such as the Department of State knew the FBI was looking into possible corruption before the deal was approved. An investigation conducted by the Office of the Inspector General noted that a multi-state investigation into the questionable dealings of the Clinton Foundation with corrupt donors was shut down in August of 2016, when pressure was asserted on the FBI by senior officials within the Obama Justice Department. The same IG's report also noted that shutting down this investigation into Clinton Foundation impropriety and influence peddling was connected to high-ranking officials in the DOJ and FBI, including A.G. Lynch, Director Comey, and Deputy Director McCabe. The same IG's report also found that Deputy Director McCabe, after consenting to the political pressure to shut down the Clinton Foundation multi-state investigation, attempted to later use unauthorized leaks to the press to create a false narrative that he was opposed to the closure of the investigation, that he did this in an attempt to salvage his reputation following revelations of questionable Clinton-connected money being donated to his wife's Virginia State Senate campaign. With regards to FISA abuse, in October 2016, the FBI and DOJ used politically biased, unverified sources to obtain warrants issued by the United States Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court of Review, the FISA court, that aided in the surveillance of U.S. citizens, including Carter Page. The warrants grant U.S. intelligence and law enforcement agencies sweeping power to collect bulk information and conduct about collection, which results in surveillance of a broad array of private communications from the past, present, and future, including those of U.S. citizens not specifically targeted in the FISA authorized warrant. To obtain these warrants, FBI and DOJ officials submitted an unverified dossier prepared by Christopher Steele to the FISA court, failing to disclose that Christopher Steele was hired by the firm Fusion GPS, which was hired by the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton campaign to prepare this dossier, and that the source was unreliable and soon thereafter was going to be terminated as a source. The FISA court was not informed that Christopher Steele was actively opposed to the election of Donald Trump, that he was the unnamed source cited in the media reports that the FBI used to corroborate his dossier, and that Fusion GPS had been hired to perform previous anti-Trump research efforts in 2015. The Woods procedures, which are the FBI's mandatory vetting process required for all FISA warrant applications instituted to ensure that all the facts contained in an application are accurate and verified to clearly support probable cause for a warrant, were not followed. Former Director Comey admitted in sworn testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee on June 8th of 2017 that material contained in the Steele dossier was known to be both salacious and unverified. Since FISA warrant applications are rarely turned down, are almost never subject to appeal, are presented in closed court with no public record, where the government is not challenged by any defense, it is imperative that the government take extra care to validate the information being utilized to build their case before they take the extraordinary step of waiving rights of a U.S. citizen without his or her knowledge or the opportunity to present a defense. At the FISA court, the government has a responsibility not only to provide the best evidence in support of its case, but also the best evidence against its case. These deeply flawed and questionable FISA warrant applications utilizing illicit sources and politically biased intelligence were approved by the DOJ and FBI officials at the highest levels before being submitted to the FISA court. It was further not disclosed to the FISA court that the wife of fourth-ranking DOJ official Bruce Ohr worked for Fusion GPS and that Christopher Steele directly transmitted the dossier and other information through Bruce Ohr for submission to the FISA court. With regards to the Trump-Russia probe, to this day, there has not been any evidence that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians to win the 2016 election. In fact, there isn't evidence that President Trump committed any crime to win the 2016 election. The initial FBI probe into the Trump campaign and alleged collusion with Russia was launched in July 2016 based on questionable and insufficient intelligence and biased motivations. And as we've learned in recent days, the DOJ, FBI, or both appear to have planted at least one person into Donald Trump's presidential campaign to infiltrate and surveil the campaign. Text messages exchanged between FBI agent Strzok and FBI counsel Lisa Page during the period of August 16, 2015 to May 17, 2017 contain serious evidence of political bias and the improper handling of investigations within the agency. The texts contain egregious evidence of bias, including Lisa Page stating, quote, Trump should go F himself, and Peter Strzok stating, quote, F Trump. Those text messages were not stored within the FBI archive system. An egregious oversight blamed on a technical glitch, and even after these messages were partially recovered by the Bureau's IG in January of 2018, many unanswered questions remain regarding impropriety and bias. Former Director Comey prepared a series of 7 memorandum containing classified information, including notes on his conversations with President Trump. Comey admitted in sworn testimony to the Senate Committee on Intelligence on June 8, 2017, that he had leaked this content to a personal friend and encouraged that friend to share the material with the press in order to trigger a special counsel investigation. An investigation conducted by the Senate Judiciary Committee later revealed that the personal friend of Director Comey was Professor Daniel Richman of Columbia Law School, and that Director Comey provided him with 4 of the 7 memorandum. Director Comey's actions are a clear violation of non-disclosure agreements he signed as a condition of his appointment, and a clear violation of FBI protocols regarding the dissemination of sensitive information outside of the Bureau, which are based on provisions of the Privacy Act of 1974. In March 2018, former FBI Director McCabe was fired by Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who noted that Deputy Director McCabe lacked candor, including under oath on multiple occasions, and had partaken in unauthorized disclosure to the news media, among other violations noted in a report issued by the Office of the IG after a wide-reaching investigation into Deputy Director McCabe's conduct. A myriad of DOJ and FBI personnel have been fired or demoted or have resigned, including FBI Director Comey, Deputy Director McCabe, Chief of Staff to the Director James Rybicki, FBI General Counsel James Baker, FBI Agent Strzok, FBI Counsel Page, FBI Special Agent Josh Campbell, DOJ Senior Official Ohr, FBI Assistant Director Michael Cortan, and Assistant Attorney General Peter Kadzik. The DOJ has failed to timely comply with several related document requests by Congress, providing members of Congress with heavily redacted versions of some but not all of the documents demanded, and offering members limited in-person viewing of these documents is an inadequate response to repeated requests after months of delay by the DOJ. As I prepare to introduce my colleagues for their remarks, in conclusion, I would just like to point out that while many in the media and American public have been trying to bring down the president without evidence that President Trump colluded with Russia to win the election, there is a ton of actual evidence of real misconduct that those same people have been attempting to completely sweep under the rug. I believe in equal scales of justice, that no one is above the law. That includes anyone regardless of last name, and that even includes people at the highest levels of the DOJ and FBI, especially when misconduct is committed in the performance of their duties while trying to take down elected officials and candidates. No official at the Justice Department can ever allow their own political bias to overwhelm their own objectivity and responsible performance of their duties. A second special counsel must be appointed, and transparency and accountability is demanded for these great, legendary, historic agencies. With that, we are confident that these great agencies will be able to move forward stronger than they ever were before. At this time, I would like to introduce Congressman Mark Meadows.
Lee, thank you so much for the resolution, the leadership that it takes. And so to be clear, it is the intent of all of the co-signers of this resolution to make a request of our leadership to bring this resolution to the House floor to be voted on to appoint a second special counsel. It is also the position of many in this group that the Attorney General Jeff Sessions should re-look at his decision to not appoint a second special counsel. The only thing that we have from Mr. Huber to evidence his work so far is an accumulation of frequent flyer miles. There has been no reports, no investigation to speak of, and I can tell you that it is deeply troubling when we talk about transparency, that we're not getting transparency from the FBI and the Department of Justice. That transparency that many times goes without saying. Rod Rosenstein and the Department of Justice, on a number of occasions, when they could tell the truth, remained silent. When Director Comey was out there on his book tour, talking about the fact that he had a friend that he shared the memo with, Rod Rosenstein knew that it was not just a friend, but indeed it was a special government employee. When Director Comey was out there talking about the fact that he only shared it with one friend, Rod Rosenstein knew that he had actually shared it with more than that, and yet the Deputy Attorney General remained silent. And when a number of us brought up the fact that there were redactions of material facts back in January, Rod Rosenstein, again, was silent. Now, perhaps he's not silent when it comes to spinning his narrative. Even today, we continue to see leaks come out of the Department of Justice and FBI spinning a narrative that, quite frankly, is not supported by the facts. So it's time that we get to the facts. It's time that we appoint a second special counsel. And I thank the leadership of Mr. Zeldin and all of those who have co-sponsored. It is time for transparency, and it's time to allow the American people to know the truth.
FBI Director James Comey has been fired. FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe has been fired. FBI General Counsel Jim Baker has been demoted, reassigned. FBI Deputy Director of Counterintelligence Peter Strzok has been demoted and reassigned. FBI Counsel Lisa Page demoted and reassigned. What did all these fired, demoted, and reassigned people do while they were in the Obama administration? They're the ones who ran the Clinton investigation, and they're the ones who launched an investigation into President Trump's campaign. And when they launched that investigation, what did they do? They took this dossier, dressed it all up, made it look like it was legitimate intelligence, took it to a secret court to get a secret warrant to spy on a fellow American citizen. And when they went to the court, they didn't tell them important facts, like who paid for the document. Didn't tell him the DNC and the Clinton campaign paid for it. Didn't tell him that the guy who wrote the document had been fired by the FBI. And yet they took it to a secret court to get a warrant to spy on a fellow American citizen loosely associated with the Trump campaign. And now we learn that they possibly paid informants to spy on the Trump campaign. When you and I go to court, we have to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. They didn't do that when they took the dossier to the court, and now we learn that possibly They paid informants to spy on the Trump campaign. And never forget this fact. In all those text messages back and forth between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, we have that one on September 2nd, 2016, where they say POTUS, President Obama, POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. And the operative word there is everything. That's a pretty darn big category. And we're supposed to believe the Department of Justice can handle this. That's what they tell us. Don't worry. We can investigate ourselves. We can handle this. Trust us. We'll be just fine. Really? Think about this question. Can Rod Rosenstein oversee an obstruction of justice investigation into the firing of James Comey when he's the guy who wrote the memo recommending the firing of James Comey? So we've been pushing for 10 months for this, and I want to applaud Congressman Zeldin for bringing the resolution to the floor, and Chairman Meadows is exactly right. This should be brought to the floor. We should vote on it, and we should tell the DOJ we are sick and tired of the runaround we've been getting from you guys. It is time to have a special, if this fact pattern doesn't warrant a second special counsel, somebody tell me what does. Somebody tell me what does. So this is exactly what is needed, and I appreciate the gentleman's leadership, and I want this, just like the chairman said, on the floor as quick as it possibly can get, and we can tell the American people we're going to do everything it takes to get answers to the questions that they have.
The IG is supposedly looking into a lot of this stuff, and while I think that the IG, there's an important role for the IG, and I don't think the IG's work is mutually exclusive from what we're trying to do, the fact of the matter is the IG is not equipped with the tools to be able to get the full set of facts, because he doesn't have subpoena power, isn't able to bring people from outside the agency, and he certainly doesn't have any tools to hold anybody accountable for violations of law. I'm eagerly awaiting the IG report that's been going on for almost 15, 16 months about the Hillary case, and maybe someday there'll be an IG report with some of this that will be beneficial, but it is not sufficient in order to get accountability. And some people say, hey, these special counsels, they're unruly, it's just not a good idea. Understand there's a difference between some of the things like Ken Starr and back in the 80s when you had an actual independent counsel, which I think was unconstitutional. Justice Scalia did, but that was operating outside true supervision of the executive branch. Robert Mueller, he's a DOJ employee, basically. He is not an independent, or not supposed to be. He's a special counsel supposedly supervised by Rod Rosenstein. I think the reason why this investigation has become unruly, and you're getting into anything under the sun, is because Rosenstein never identified a crime to be investigated at the outset, and he's not done anything to keep Mueller on target. I think basically Mueller tells Rosenstein what to do. So with the special counsel, with what we're asking for here, I don't want them involved in all kind of extraneous stuff. Answer the core questions, investigate potential violations of law, and then move on or hold people accountable. That's the way this should be done. And if you had somebody who was supervising that and was serious about keeping the trains on time, then you can do this in a way that I think can be done much more expeditiously than some of these things have previously. Thanks.
Thank you. I, too, am so grateful to Lee Zeldin for his leadership on bringing this resolution. We do need a vote on it quickly, and that has to be on the floor. Now, back when Mueller was appointed, there was nobody any more outraged than I was. I knew of the damage he had done to the FBI. He had purged the FBI of thousands of years of experience, purged FBI training materials so they couldn't recognize radical Islam, and this was falling right into the category of what Mueller was good at, and that is covering his own rear end, and also in this case covering that of Rod Rosenstein. Rosenstein was a U.S. attorney. Mueller was FBI director. Weissman was working on the case as well to investigate Russia's illegal effort to get control of U.S. uranium. They soft-pedaled that, forced their informant to sign a non-disclosure agreement. They had to keep things quiet so the Commission on Foreign Investments in the United States would be able to vote to allow the sale of uranium that would ultimately end up in the hands of Russia. If Mueller and Rosenstein and Weissman let the public know about Russia's illegal efforts, there's no way CFIUS could have approved that sale. And then, of course, the Clinton Foundation wouldn't have gotten their $44 million, along with so much other money that changed hands. So these guys were disqualified. If they had any decency, they would have recused themselves from being able to A, appoint a special counsel, B, be a special counsel. And this is Robert Mueller, who was just shortly before that begging to get the job as director of the FBI. He had no business doing this. I think Eric Holder, although he misrepresented facts before the Judiciary Committee, he was not misrepresenting facts to CNN some weeks back when he said, look, I've known Robert Mueller for 20, 30 years, and he's not going to stop, in essence, until he gets Trump on something. And that is the trouble. We need a special prosecutor to investigate the special prosecutor, to investigate Rosenstein. Just as already been said, Rosenstein is a guy that did the memo saying, let's fire Comey. He had no business being involved in this, but there is a reason. And if Mueller had had any interest in making sure the public knew this was a just and proper action, he would have gone out of his way to hire people who were not connected to the Clintons, to the Democratic Party. That way, people would know that this is a just and fair action. No, but since it was not just and fair, they needed people that would cover themselves and cover Mueller and Rosenstein and Weissman. So that's where that's happened. It was June of last year. I told President Trump, look, nobody needs firing more than Robert Mueller, but you can't be the one to fire him, because we got some weak-kneed Republicans out there who will say they'll come after you if you fire the guy that needs firing. But you can appoint a special counsel, and that's what we needed then. It's what we needed now. And like any good idea, it just takes a while for it to catch on. Now it is apparent to some of the people I have great respect for right here behind me, and I'm hoping we'll finally get a vote and force this thing to a head. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, what is the standard for the appointment of a special counsel at the Department of Justice? You have Rosenstein appoint a special counsel to investigate the president based on a slow boil suspicion of Carter Page, a Papadopoulos memo written by Peter Strzok, who's subsequently been demoted and reassigned, and a dossier that was paid for by the DNC in the Clinton campaign and curated in part by Russians. So if that gets you a special counsel where, you know, at one moment you got Rosenstein sitting next to Mueller, pitching Mueller as the replacement for James Comey, and not 24 hours later, after it became clear the president was not going to hire Mueller, you've got Rosenstein selecting Mueller to be the special counsel. Here, the factual basis seems to be a lot stronger. Mr. Zeldin showed great leadership. He laid that out, and Speaker Ryan has always said to all of us, he wants a House that has a bottom-up process, that's organic in its activities. 10 months ago, members of the Judiciary Committee began calling for a second special counsel. At the committee leadership level, Chairman Bob Goodlatte of the Judiciary Committee, Chairman Trey Gowdy of the Oversight Committee also called for a second special counsel. When Mr. Zeldin sent a letter to the Attorney General, he was joined by the Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, the Majority Whip, Steve Scalise. So we have done what has been asked of us as the membership. We've uncovered the true facts. We've persuaded leadership at the committee level and at the conference level. And now we need Speaker Ryan to put this resolution on the floor so that the full House of Representatives can answer the question about the legitimacy and the need for a second special counsel to investigate what I perceive to be very serious crimes and improprieties at the FBI and the Department of Justice.
I'm Jody Heiss from Georgia's 10th District. I also want to thank Lee Zeldin for his leadership on this and the leadership of every person on this stage for keeping this issue on the forefront. Let me just kind of bring this down as to why this matters to the American people. We've heard a lot of specifics, but what does this matter specifically to the American people? Well, truth, justice, and transparency are not partisan issues or concepts. They are the backbone of American government. And when we begin to allow people to ignore the rule of law or to set a standard of their own to abide by, then it becomes our responsibility to shine light on that, and in this case, to conduct an impartial investigation. There can be no question at this point, as it appears so evident, that the FBI and the Department of Justice, at the bottom line, wanted Hillary Clinton to not be indicted, and they did not want Donald Trump to be the President of the United States. This ought to be a grave concern to every citizen in this country. In light of all the serious issues that have been raised, the allegations, we've got to get to the bottom of this to determine whether or not the Department of Justice and the FBI tip the scales of justice. We've got to get to the bottom of whether or not their attempts were to benefit one political candidate to the harm of another, and we've got to get to the bottom of the issue as to whether or not they circumvented the rule of law. And so it is time for our leadership to exhibit leadership and to get this resolution to the floor for a vote. The credibility, obviously, of the Department of Justice and FBI is at stake, but what is also at stake is the ability of the American people to trust their government, the FBI, the Department of Justice, Congress, all of us who are in this role to get to the bottom of this. So again, thank each of you for being here this afternoon. And again, Mr. Zeldin and those behind me, it's time we get to the bottom of this. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Claudia Tenney, 22nd District. I'm really just grateful that my colleague from New York, Lee Zeldin, has got the tenacity to keep on this issue. I'm happy to join him. I'm also happy to join our colleague, Representative Ron DeSantis. On our letter, we outline very clearly the points that were made, that what we think are potential violations of law, and ask them to look into these issues, and we're still waiting. And it's really important that we restore the integrity of the FBI and the Department of Justice so that we have equal justice under law, so that the American citizens know that what we're going to be doing is looking at everything equally and not just picking winners and losers based on political lines. This seems to me like if the tables were turned, this would be another modern day Watergate. And right now, I think we need to really look into this. I think a second counsel is our only option at this point. And I applaud all my colleagues, echo their sentiments. This is something we really have to do if we're going to stand up for the citizens of this nation. And I just want to say thank you to Lee and to everyone here for standing strong on this issue, and for all of you for hopefully reporting this and getting it out there so the American people know that we are going to be standing for equal justice under law. Thank you.
Paul Gosa from Arizona's 4th, and you wonder why this matters. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. How many things have we had to see in government oversight, from Fast and Furious to IRS to the reporters delegation? Once again, Article 1, Section 8 gives us this power and purview to oversee this application. Benjamin Franklin was asked, what kind of government did you give us? A republic if you can keep it. And the fundamental aspect of a republic is to hold everybody equally accountable to the rule of law. When you look at all the things that Mr. Zeldin actually orchestrated and you start tying these pieces together, this was an orchestrated campaign against a duly elected government. That's why there's nothing short of treason for those that actually participated in that FISA or participated in this. The American people deserve the facts, they need the truth, and they need to know that everybody is held to the same standard of the law.
Morning, Andy Biggs from Arizona's 5th District. I'm thankful to Lee Zeldin for bringing this forward and my colleagues behind me who have spoken, and I'm reminded of what a former Arizona congressman said. Everything's been said, just hasn't been said by everybody yet. So I'm going to take a minute to just tell you my little view of this. what has been said is dynamite. It's a scandal of our time, scandal perhaps of our lifetime. There's two key components here that need to be really explored, that were set forth but need to be really outlined more. Number one, and Congressman Jordan mentioned it, and that is reference to the former administration where the president was to be informed of all things going on. We need to know really what that meant. We need to know how high this scandal went. That's imperative. Number two, the apparent motivation for all of this misconduct, going right back to the Clinton scandal, right on into the current scandal, is political in nature. That is antithetical to what the founding of this country and the fabric of this nation today should be and was. Those two things right there are things we need to continue to investigate. We need a special counsel to go forward and investigate everything that we've iterated in this resolution. But moreover, we need to get to the bottom of what the previous president knew with regard to this misconduct. And we also need to know why this abuse of power was performed for political purposes, because that can never happen in this country again.
I'm David Rouser, represent Southeastern North Carolina, 7th District, and I want to applaud my colleagues for their leadership on this. I'm proud to be here to stand with them. I firmly believe that obviously our country is divided. A lot of folks are divided in terms of their opinion of our president, but I also think that the vast majority of Americans believe in a fair process. I'll be candid and say that I'm not a big fan of special counsels, but I think one is necessary in this particular matter moving forward so that we can help to create a much more fair process and get to the real truth of the matter. And I too encourage our leadership to bring this to the floor. The American people deserve the truth. And not only that, it's imperative, I believe, for the future and survival of our republic. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of my colleagues who are here, the chairs and committee members of the House Intelligence Committee, Judiciary Committee, Oversight and Government Reform, the House and the Senate, for all of their hard work to be able to uncover all these facts. And we'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Congressman and to anyone up there, can you talk to us about your discussions with House leadership, and if you talked to anyone at the White House about this idea, and why it isn't coming up with a vote? That seems to be your prime audience right now.
We haven't even introduced it yet. We'll be introducing it here in the coming hours. We would encourage all of our colleagues interested in this issue to sign on. We'll be engaging with all of our colleagues, regardless of whether they sign on, to be able to discuss this issue with them. And we certainly would like to see a vote on the House floor. The resolution will be introduced in the coming hours.
But have you discussed this with House leadership?
So there have been a number of conversations with our House leadership in terms of the frustration of where we are with these documents, but also the need for a second special counsel. I think it's been outlined already that we have members of leadership that have called for it, members, chairmen of committee that have done so. And so, yes, they're fully aware. At this point, it's a drastic step, but quite frankly, these are drastic facts that continue to bubble to the surface, and it's time that we get a response. And so I don't know that they will be surprised by any of the demands of this request. The resolution obviously is something that Mr. Zeldin has taken the lead on, and we plan to have further conversations on that.
Congressman Meadows, could you just give us, I know it's a little bit hour by hour, an update on where things stand with this meeting that worked out at the White House, where you are supposedly going to be able to view some of these documents?
Well, obviously, the president had a meeting with DOJ officials yesterday and FBI officials yesterday. I applaud him for his spirit of transparency, I can tell you in my conversations with the president, he has been concerned about one thing, and that's transparency with the American people. That meeting yesterday obviously gives us great hope that the documents will actually be able to be reviewed by the appropriate Intel Committee members, not broadly by Congress. Certainly, I would think that you would have ranking members as well if they wanted to view those documents. I think there's probably more interest on our side because the allegation of wrongdoing certainly would be supported more by our side than the Democrat colleagues. But at this point, my understanding is in the coming days, indeed this week, that Chairman Nunes and Chairman Gowdy certainly will be able to view those documents. Now, listen, we've been here before. We've had a lot of rhetoric. And, quite frankly, we've had very little action. And so I'm not optimistic that that will actually happen. But I can tell you that at this point, that's what we're hopeful for.
If it's another meeting to talk about seeing records versus actually getting access to the records, will Republicans refuse to attend?
Well, I can tell you another meeting without evidence and without actually seeing the documents is worthless. We've been in this. There are 2 subpoenas that are outstanding that have not been complied with. From Oversight and Judiciary, we've had a subpoena, well, actually a request since November, but a subpoena that is there. This president has turned over 1.2 million documents to the special counsel Mueller. And yet our DOJ and FBI in a 7-month period has delivered less than 19,000 documents out of a possible 1.2 million documents. Most of those are duplicative. And it is time that we get to see the documents. And so just having a briefing is not what we're talking about. We actually need to see the documents. We believe that we have a clear understanding of what's there.
I have a follow-up question for Congressman Meadows or whoever wants to take it. Putting media reports to one side, what does the evidence show about the number of informants that were used to target the Trump campaign?
Yeah, I think at this particular point, that would be in a classified setting, and I'm not privy to that. As you know, we've had a number of documents that we've reviewed in a non-classified settings where you can make the argument that there was more than one, but that is certainly not something that I would be privy to and can't speak with authority on.
This one, go ahead.
Mr. Meadows and Mr. Gates, you guys talked to President Trump often. Have you guys talked to him about this? Has he asked for this?
We sent him a letter last week.
Have you spoken with him?
But has Trump asked for this?
Listen, this initiative is driven by Mr. Zeldin and certainly members of the House, and for us to suggest that the president has requested a second special counsel, that's not the fact, not in any conversations that I've had with him, and I normally do not comment on any conversations I've had, but I can specifically say with that one, he has not requested this.
But have you spoken
Same
with
answer.
him about this idea in general, about a second special counsel?
I could just say, as the author of this resolution, I have not had any conversations at all with the president with regards to this resolution and the call for a second special counsel. This has been 100% a product of talking to the colleagues, to my colleagues who are signing on to the resolution, 100%.
I had a clarification question, I think it's for Congressman Zeldin, on Bruce Orr. Does the evidence show that Bruce Orr was given information by his wife, who worked for Fusion GPS, and that information was used to either obtain or renew a FISA order?
Bruce Orr was in direct communication with Christopher Steele directly. So there is no doubt that that connection, that conflict was real and one that resulted in information being passed through Bruce Orr to the Justice Department, to the FISA court as an intermediary.
Just really quickly.
Did you want to add something on that, Joe?
I've spoken to other more moderate members of your caucus, one of whom used the word crazy to describe described all of you in this effort. Can you respond to that?
Yeah.
You want to give us the name? I'll be glad.
Yeah. In what context? This resolution specifically?
This effort, yes. This pursuit. Please.
That a separate and equal branch of government wants the information it's entitled to do the constitutional duty of oversight for the American people? If that's crazy, you got to take that up with the guys who wrote the Constitution, because that's exactly what we're supposed to do. So just give us the stuff. Give us the information that we're entitled to see so we can get answers to the questions that the American people have, that we have, and frankly, that all of you in the press have. So that's exactly what we're supposed to do. This, because we've been so frustrated, this is an effort that has to happen to get to the bottom of all this.
And Casey, let me just, there is no one who's read more of these documents personally than I have. So I would challenge any of my colleagues, if they want to be informed on the probable cause and the real reason for us requesting that, they can come and we can spend weeks reading over the documents that I've read over the last 7 months, and I can assure you there's a there there.
Yeah, and I would just add that what seems crazy is when you have the former Attorney General meeting with the former president, the husband of the target of an investigation on the tarmac, and then immediately exonerating Hillary Clinton. What seems crazy to me is that Bruce Ohr, whose wife works at Fusion GPS, is serving as an intermediary with Christopher Steele. It seems crazy to me that James Comey would be writing an exoneration before interviewing Secretary Clinton and all of her closest aides who weren't yet to be interviewed. What seems crazy to me is that you would go to a FISA court and be presenting this dossier and not be telling the FISA judges that the information is unverified, that it was paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee, and providing all the other information that was important for those FISA judges, not only to know what the government's best evidence were, but also what the government's worst evidence was. So, as far as what's crazy about all of this is the fact that every single thing in that resolution is accurate. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Take one last question. Two less. One. Yes.
As it relates to some of these document requests that continue to be made at the Justice Department, there's reluctance on the part of the Justice Department to turn those over, not simply because of the classified nature of the requests and some of the materials involved, but also because this is an ongoing investigation. There's concern about potentially sharing with the potential subjects of an investigation materials relevant to their investigation. Is that proper? Should the White House ensure that the President himself, former officials, are walled off from any materials that might be shared? And can you commit that members of Congress are not sharing with the White House any of these sensitive documents that might be helpful to the President and his legal team as they prepare potentially for immediate discussion?
Pardon us for our skepticism on the Department of Justice's filtering of the information they provide Congress. We've already caught them redacting information that was not redacted as a consequence of any national security concern or any sources and methods concern, but because it was personally embarrassing to them that they were talking about their relationship with a judge who might oversee hearings. So the Department of Justice has lost their credibility to self-filter based on their own conduct. And look, I mean, a second special counsel solves back against that concern, because if a second special counsel is appointed, you have independent eyes that are able to collect the evidence, make a review, and then bring an action forward. And so you could in essence divorce those concerns from a process that had more integrity, and we think that Mr. Zeldin has laid out that correct process.
President Obama, he is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS, okay? He's the founder. He founded ISIS. And I would say the co-founder would be crooked Hillary Clinton.
You've tuned in to Stranger Than Fiction News, broadcasting live from the dark side of the planet. As the news came in to our news desk, something stood out. Breaking news. Exclusive. Obama administration knowingly funded a designated Al-Qaeda group. We've seen this before. The group has been on a list of terrorist funders for over a decade when a government agency specifically approved funding for it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Middle East Forum has discovered that the Obama administration approved a grant of over $200,000 of taxpayer money to an Al-Qaeda affiliate in Sudan. Now, this is on top of the $1.5 trillion to the Iranians and all the money that they dumped into Syria, into ISIS, and we're going to get into all of that. The nefarious history of Hussein Obama. A very nefarious figure indeed. According to the mainstream media news outlets, this story begins in October 2004 when the U.S. Treasury Department, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, designated the ISRA, kind of like ISIS, the ISRA as a terror funding organization. It did so because of the ISRA's links to Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. According to the U.S. Treasury, by the year 2000, ISRA had raised $5 million for bin Laden's group. By 2010, it was receiving tons of money from Obama. So this is a big deal, ladies and gentlemen. And it gets bigger when you understand just how deep Obama was into the terrorism. And of course, you saw the opening clip of Trump saying the founder of ISIS is Obama. And the co-founder would have to be Hillary Clinton. But this is being reported in Fox News, the National Review. We're going to be leaving a link to the National Review article because it has all of the money trail. Just another example of this guy funding the terrorism, ladies and gentlemen. And they've been funding the terrorism, this deep state, for quite some time. They've been funding it since 9/11. Perhaps it's become trendy for people in power to finance their terrorism so that they can remain wartime presidents and serve some sort of relevance as commander-in-chief. If there's no war, how, what is he commanding? Perhaps is what they're thinking. Everybody loves a wartime president. We've seen this time and time again. But we're going to be playing the clip here, the long-lost clip, not that long ago, but a very important clip in history that changed the course of perception when it came to terrorism and U.S. involvement. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to be mesmerized.
You're on record as saying the handling of Syria by this administration has been a mistake. Many people would argue that the US actually saw the rise of ISIL coming and turned a blind eye, or even encouraged it as a counterpoint to Assad. And a secret analysis by the agency you ran, the Defense Intelligence Agency, in August 2012 said, and I quote, "There is the possibility of establishing a declared or undeclared Salafist," it's not secret anymore, it was released under FOI. The quote is, "There is the possibility of establishing a declared or undeclared Salafist principality in eastern Syria, and this is exactly what the supporting powers to the opposition want in order to isolate the Syrian regime." The US saw the ISIL caliphate coming and did nothing.
Yeah, I think that where we missed the point, I mean, where we totally blew it, I think, was in the very beginning. I mean, we're talking 4 years now into this effort in Syria. Most people won't even remember. It's only been a couple of years. The Free Syrian Army, that movement. I mean, where are they today? Al-Nusra, where are they today? And how much have they changed? When you don't get in and help somebody, they're going to find other means to achieve their goals. And I think right now what we have allowed is...
Hold on, you were helping them in 2012.
We've allowed this extremist... these extremist militants to come in.
But why did you allow them to do that, General? You were in post. You were the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Well, those are policy.
I took the liberty of printing out that document. Yeah. This is the memo I quoted from. Did you see this document in 2012? Was this come across your table?
Yeah. I paid very close attention to all this.
So when you saw this, did you not pick up a phone and saying, "What on earth are we doing supporting these Syrian rebels?"
That kind of information is presented, and
what did you do about
it? Those become. I argued about it.
did you say we shouldn't be supporting these groups?
I did. I mean, we argued about the different groups that were there, and we said, you know, who is it that is involved here? And I will tell you that I do believe that the intelligence was very clear. And now it's a matter of whether or not policy is going to be as clear and as defining and as precise as it needs to be, and I don't believe it was.
Just on what you're saying, just to clarify here, you're saying today my understanding is you're saying we should have backed the rebels. You're saying in government you agreed with this analyst.
We should have done more earlier on in this effort, you know, than we did.
But in 2012, which was
3
years ago, let's just be clear, just for the sake of our viewers. In 2012, your agency was saying, quote, the Salafists, the Muslim Brotherhood, and Al-Qaeda in Iraq are the major forces driving the insurgency in Syria. In 2012, the US was helping coordinate arms transfers to those same groups. Why did you not stop that if you're worried about the rise of quote-unquote Islamic extremism?
I mean, I hate to say it's not my job, but my job was to ensure that the accuracy of our intelligence that was being presented was as good as it could be. And I will tell you, it goes before 2012. I mean, when we were in Iraq, and we still had decisions to be made before there was a decision to pull out of Iraq in 2011. I mean, it was very clear what we were going to face.
Well, I admire your frankness on this subject.
What we were going to face.
Let me just before we move on, just to clarify once more. You are basically saying that even in government at the time, you knew those groups were around, you saw this analysis, and you were arguing against it. But who wasn't listening?
I think the administration.
The administration turned a blind eye to your analysis.
I don't know if they turned a blind eye. I think it was a decision. I think it was a willful decision.
A willful decision to go support an insurgency that had Salafists, Al-Qaeda, and the Muslim Brotherhood.
A willful decision to do what they're doing, which you'd have to really ask the president, what is it that he actually is doing with the policy that is in place, because it is very, very confusing.
Confusing indeed, confusing on purpose. Another example, ladies and gentlemen, of how the Obama administration was funding terrorism. And this is a big deal when you think of ISIS. What was it? You know, it is chopping people's heads off. It was, you know, they were eating people. They were burning people alive, drowning them, blowing them up. I mean, it was pure horror. 100% war crimes. And you had the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency at the time in 2015 tell the world that Obama was responsible for ISIS. Now, everybody that saw this interview, their jaw dropped. And this interview has been pretty much scrubbed from the internet, just like many other inconvenient truths out there. But this is a very important interview, and we had to put in this full 4 minutes of this interview to put all the pieces in place of what exactly we were talking about. You know, a 1 minute clip just wouldn't have done it. What groups, where, who exactly. But now, in that 4 minutes, you've seen all of it come out. You want to know who's responsible for ISIS? Ask Obama. And we see this trail of funding of terror groups by Hussein Obama. And this isn't the only thing. I mean, there are other terror groups in Egypt and the like that had links right back to Obama. So why are we seeing all this evidence that Obama was funding terrorism? And why isn't the FBI concerned? You know why? You know how Obama got away with it? He hired a communist as director of the CIA. Brennan was an admitted communist at the height of the Cold War. Imagine that. All right? That's admitted. You can check out our archives. You've got the reports from like Fox and the mainstream news right there. A senator from Congress. It's admitted in the Wikipedia. Nobody denies the fact that Brennan was a communist at the height of the Cold War. And this guy was covering up all of the illicit activities that was going on in the Middle East, all of the gun running from Benghazi. Remember Benghazi and all of that stuff? All right, well, Brennan had a part in that. He had to. And, of course, it was like a communist as well as a terrorist, Obama, working together to fund all of these terror groups in the Middle East. We're talking hardcore war crimes. This is just another, big piece of evidence in the story. Now, if you're just joining us, there's bombshell news that's breaking all over the mainstream news right now, and that the Obama administration knowingly funded another terror organization linked to bin Laden. So we've got the links to ISIS, we've got the links to bin Laden here. His name is Hussein Obama, and just a couple weeks ago, not even a couple weeks ago, Obama was in Kenya saying, "I'm home. I'm the first sitting president from Kenya." Everybody knows he was born in Kenya. He was raised in Indonesia. Nobody knows who this Obama is. But if you research Obama, Wendy Nixon, and Maggie Nixon, you may have a better understanding of who Obama truly is, ladies and gentlemen. There's so much stuff that could be said about Hussein Obama. Of course, in the Snowden files, it turned out that Obama was spying on every American. He was breaking the law everywhere he went. And even now, he looks like he's kind of like high on some, some kind of stimulant. You can tell he's on something. I'm not sure if it's meth or crack or some sort of pharmaceutical. It's really tough to tell these days. But in any case, wherever this guy goes, he's a criminal. He's planting evidence against Trump, using the FBI as some sort of weapon, planting evidence, getting secret warrants, sending in the spies. It's just a mess. Obama is ISIS. Really is making a long story short. But there's ample evidence that Obama was funding terrorism, probably still is funding the terrorism. And a lot of the deep state attacks are coming back, are linked back to the deep state, to Comey's FBI, and their counterintelligence program. We saw this quite clearly in the Las Vegas Illuminati massacre. You had Special Agent Ruse right next to Sheriff Lombardo. Ruse being one of the former heads of the counterintelligence program. Where else have we heard FBI counterintelligence recently? Peter Strzok, responsible for planting the evidence against Trump. Have you ever seen that movie Enemy of the State, where they've got like this little cell, the deep state, just running all sorts of operations? That's basically what we discovered there with the Comey, McCabe, Peter Strzok criminal syndicate. But it all went back up to Obama, ladies and gentlemen. Obama is ISIS. Obama is a war criminal. And everybody should be concerned about this situation. It's as if we've let Hitler go. Hitler free to strike again. This is a situation that cannot be tolerated in a country ruled by law. But that doesn't seem to matter much anymore, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be bringing in Danny Ray from Righteous Defiance. And we're going to try and get more information on Obama's links to terrorism, because there are many links to terrorism. Not only international but domestic. He was turning all of the agencies into the Gestapo, weaponizing the deep state against the American people, preparing the FEMA camps, and Hillary was probably going to be the trigger. Freudian slip with Hillary there, where he just said Hitler, because that's probably what she was destined to be. Danny Ray live on Stranger Than Fiction News. What do you think of this recent bombshell news to hit the mainstream media? Obama is ISIS.
It's nobody's very surprised. Anyone who really pays attention to what has been going on with this administration, the past administration, all of the crimes that they're guilty of. I mean, this is just one of them. This is one of the many And, you know, that really wasn't a slip. Hillary was supposed to come in and seal this deal. She was going to be, you know, the tyrant to make sure to sell us right into the hands of the New World Order that has been set up right before us. You know, it's been in the works, and, you know, her husband had his part in setting this plan up. Both Bushes, of course, we know Father Bush is the one who absolutely laid it out there on the line. You know, this whole New World Order, this big idea. This is the idea that no other American in this country really wants to follow. We all want sovereignty. We all want to make sure that our tax money is not going to fund terrorism around the world. This is just one example. The ISRA is just one example of how many different contractors or quote-unquote organizations that we might have sent our tax money to. Honestly, it's very disheartening to think that our money even went to, you know, anyone who would do such things as ISIS did to many, many people. And again, we don't know how many other quote-unquote organizations there were out there that did things like this, that managed to scam money. I mean, World Vision, you know, that's one of these organizations that a lot of people actually donate to. And
USAID, I mean, sounds familiar, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And honestly, like, who doesn't want to help other countries? Anybody out there, they're like, oh, there are people in need. We should definitely, you know, pitch in whatever we can. And sadly, we've been tricked into giving terrorists our money, not willingly, of course, because these people were definitely in the SAM database, which is I'll break that down for you guys. The System for Award Management is what it's called now. Whenever Bill Clinton was president, it was called something different. I want to think of that one. It was called, I think it's CCR, and that stands for like central. I got it. I'm sorry. I wrote it down. Central Contractor Registration, and it's all been forwarded and put into one giant database. But this database, it had this organization listed as someone who is actually a terrorist, and they should not be able to get funds. But someone either conveniently looked over it, or they knew about it and they pushed for these funds to be sent out anyway. So either way, I think there's definitely an investigation here, and hopefully this is done quickly, because this would be another one of those things, just like we know with Hillary and all the perjuries, and this would be the one thing that we could definitely get Obama for, because he was the one who was in charge of this.
Well, absolutely. The buck stops with him. He's responsible for it. They can say, you know, it was the administration, that it was some sort of oversight. They're always going to do plausible deniability. We've got a clip from John Kerry that confirms Obama is ISIS, so listen to this.
They are targeted by the opposition, and we are arming. So, and training. The reason Russia came in is because ISIL was getting stronger. Daesh was threatening the possibility of going to Damascus and so forth. And that's why Russia came in, because they didn't want a Daesh government. And they supported Assad. And we know that this was growing. We were watching.
They were watching, they were knowing. So we had confirmation from the Director of Defense Intelligence, Michael Flynn. And of course, this is why they went after him. The first person they went after, the very first target, was the Director of Defense Intelligence that outed Obama as ISIS. And you've had John Kerry just say, you know, we watched him grow. this confirms that they knew exactly what they were doing. Not only did they watch them grow, but they were found with all of our equipment. They had U.S. tents, they had Humvees, they had cars, from used car lots in America. And somebody was buying them en masse and shipping them directly to the front lines for the terrorists. And everybody remembers the videos of airdrops falling into the hands of ISIS, and people were like, we don't know how it happened. They know exactly how it happened. And the problem is that this deep left continues to fund terrorism in the Middle East, and conveniently they'll stage these Gladio B events like the gas attacks in Syria that have the fingerprints of the white helmets all over them, and it leads back to the British. But in any case, we've seen the links, we've seen the evidence. We know exactly what we're up against here. There's some people out there in the comments. We saw a few shills that are like, oh, it's just time to unfollow and go back to Rachel Madcow on NBC because there they love Hillary. Well, go fuck yourself and go right back to NBC. Nobody asked you to be here. I'm sorry that somehow you felt like something else made sense, but as soon as we started talking about Hillary and Obama, it didn't make sense anymore. And I think that just might be a little biased, and you just can't see past the illusion of the television. But one of these days, you're going to get the red pill. And if it isn't here, it's going to be somewhere else. This is being reported all around the planet right now. Another case where Obama was funding terrorism. And listen to the President of the United States. Okay? Listen to the President of the United States.
ISIS is honoring President Obama. He is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS. Okay? He's the founder. He founded ISIS. And I say the co-founder would be crooked Hillary Clinton.
And let's not forget Kami Brennan. So there you go. I mean, it doesn't get any more clear than that. How many times did he repeat it? Obama is the founder of ISIS. Everybody knows this. Okay? If you don't know this, you've been living under a rock, or you're willfully ignorant. In any case, it's not our problem. We're reporting the news, and this is what the evidence tells us. Had it been flipped around, we would have reported it the other way. I'm sorry if your hero is a terrorist. Walk away. Walk away, ladies and gentlemen. Do you feel like your dear leader was a terrorist, Obama? Then walk away. Because that's exactly what people are looking at here. And what's happening on the other side of the Atlantic is no different with this Theresa May. You know, they're dropping chemical weapons 3 miles from their chemical weapons factory, and then they're blaming the Russians. You know, they love to blame the Russians for everything. Like in these WikiLeaks, when it came out that Podesta and the whole crew is a bunch of pedophiles. You know, they're like, oh, the Russians, right? The Russians called 911. They said Hillary and company are pedophiles. All the evidence substantiates this. And then the news media is like, let's go arrest the whistleblower. Imagine, you know, you're seeing a bank robbery. You call 911, the cops come in, they arrest you, and they let the criminals go. That's exactly what's happening with this Russia story. They can commit any crime they want, say the Russians did it, and, you know, the media puts it out there and everybody buys it. How stupid do you have to be? A lot of people are waking up to this, but the real question that people should be asking themselves is why? Why are they pushing war with the Russians? That's a question that perhaps, you know, we'll get to later on in this broadcast. But it really goes back to the essence of what we're up against. We're up against a cult of death, the pure definition of evil. And these people are into watching the world burn, causing misery and anger and hatred and division. And they use technology as a method of delivery right into the comfort of your own home, right into your subconscious. And, you know, they're planting all of these ideas. But these ideas that, you know, that have structured people's perception of reality, for the most part, they're false. And, you know, you'll get, you know, little bits of truth here and there, and hopefully you'll piece it all together one day. But in any case, you know, the history that most people know by watching the television, it's all false. You know, you can start at 9/11, you can start at JFK, you can start at, you know, the crash of 1918, creation of the Federal Reserve, something that Trump is looking to, you know, federalize. But however you look at it, however you spin it, you know, most people's perception of what's going on out there is completely skewed by the television. And now, instead of it being the Happy Days and Mr. Ed and Andy Griffith, we got communists and socialists in America waving their communist flag, hating our country, and telling us to be worried about the Russians. When you've got communists telling you to be worried about the Russians, you should be thinking one thing: the Russians ain't communists no more. And the commies that are still in Russia, they want their country back. And Comrade Brennan is just like those commies back home. And he just wants his communist country back. Danny Ray, what do you think about that?
I think you're right on. We've watched this happen for, you know, generations, and it's because people have been lulled to sleep by the sound and the visions that are being programmed into their minds by the television. People only want to believe what's on the boob tube. And I mean, if you think about it, that's exactly what people have turned into. Just a bunch of boobs. They go around mimicking whatever the TV says. If the TV doesn't say it, then it must not be true. You know, nobody wants to pick up a book. Nobody wants to look at history. Nobody wants to, you know, even pay attention to what these people are literally saying with their own words. Like I said before, like, this has been generations now. Daddy Bush is the one he's the guy who announced this New World Order strategy, and every president since then, you know, they've implemented it step by step, where like they're just a bunch of frogs in a cool pot and this thing's starting to boil. And sadly, you know, a lot of these people are still trying to hang out in the pot while we're trying to jump and pull them out. And they don't want to. They want to stay in this boiling pot. They want to continue on with, you know, all of these lies and believe what they've been told by these same, you know, 5 or 6 corporations that own this mainstream media giant. You know, that everyone seems to just not even care that, you know, they've been lied to for so long. And, you know, the reason why we have Trump derangement syndrome is because of the television. You know, if you think about it, even those Republicans that I named, you know, the Bushes, for example, they voted for Hillary. Think about that for a second. The Republicans that wanted this New World Order, that are so against the Democrats, right? So against the Democrats, they voted for her and would not vote for Trump. But this is why, because Trump calls out the truth the way that the truth needs to be called out. We have to have real freedom back in America, and the only way that we can do that is to drain this swamp, and the swamp is deep. It didn't start with Obama, but Obama definitely was, you know, that legacy that he didn't want erased, the one that Hillary was supposed to take over. You know, that we're so lucky that we didn't get what was coming down the pipeline to us, because this country would be a totally different place right now. It seems a lot more divided, but honestly, you guys turn off the TV and start talking to your neighbor about these things, you'll see we have a whole lot more in common than we don't. We all want to live free, prosperous lives. We all want to have clean food and water and air. We all want to make sure that our children are protected and that they're not being harmed when they're leaving our home. We want to be able to live a prosperous life. We all should be on this same team against these people who have strategically tried to crumble our freedoms, take away our Constitution, and sell our country out to this New World Order system. That's what we should do. We need to gang together instead of against each other. This is the most important aspect right here, that we all come together and we all fight this system that has been implemented all around us. Turn off the tube. Go talk to somebody. You'll see that no matter what their skin color, no matter what their
I have
age,
to interrupt, Danny Ray. I love your story. I love your optimism, but you know, I see a lot of people out there. It's like idiocracy. It's like crazy people, zombies.
That's why we have to talk to them. We got to shake them out. You know, I'll be honest, Ron.
Eugenics.
I was once one of them. Okay? So that's why it's so important to me that we have to reach across the aisle here. And, you know, the walk away movement is definitely one of those things that shows us that this is happening. That it is not hard for us to reach across the aisle and say, you guys,
well,
this is really what's going on.
We'll find out during the midterms. We'll find out during the midterms. If you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, big breaking news. Obama funded a UN-designated terror group with links to Bin Laden and ISIS, and it looks like the video guy is going to get fired for his graphics there. But in any case, there is you know, some major ripples coming through the headlines because of this. There's all sorts of money being funneled into nefarious organizations with direct links to Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, and you've heard some of the other players in the intelligence community come out and say straightforwardly that Obama was funding and protecting ISIS. It was a policy decision to make it grow so that it would destabilize the Syrian regime. And when you think about all those videos of people's heads getting cut off, people getting gassed, and all that stuff, that's coming from Obama and the deep left. And whether you like it or not is really besides the point. The truth doesn't care if you like it or not. What we're dealing with here, literally, ladies and gentlemen, is you know, war crimes, and it should be treated as such. You know, people were gassed in Syria. People were, you know, chopped to pieces, blown up, drowned, set on fire. We're talking some massive crimes here, and somebody needs to be held accountable. And you know, it's too bad if you feel like, you know, Obama is your hero. It doesn't matter. You know, these are some serious crimes, and you don't want people like this influencing politics, you know, signing big deals on Netflix, putting books out there. That's not what we need. We need Obama for prison. We need Hillary for prison. And these people are obviously guilty of numerous crimes, and the fact that you've got shills like Rosenstein and Sessions just sitting on their hands collecting a big fat paycheck, you know, it's an insult. Something must be done. These people need to be you know, brought before some sort of military tribunal, and perhaps you know, drug tested as well. We're seeing a lot of interesting footage of Obama drugged out on his various staycations out there overseas. And perhaps, you know, he's staying overseas so long right now because he's feeling like perhaps one of these indictments are going to get unsealed. Undoubtedly, Obama is ISIS. You heard the President of the United States say so. I think that the Department of Justice or somebody, you know, whether it be military justice or civil justice, somebody needs to intervene and hold Obama accountable for these crimes. This is right now, today, in the mainstream news. This is undoubted, absolutely bona fide, and it's another case where Obama was dumping, you know, untold sums into the hands of terrorists. This needs to stop. Justice must be done. And you might be biased like Peter Strzok, you might be biased like Comey and McCabe, and that's your right to be biased. But the fact remains that if we're going to be a nation of laws, then we need you know, justice in each and every one of these cases. And so there should be, you know, a special investigator, an independent counsel looking at Obama's war crimes, looking at Obama's you know, violation of our Fourth Amendment rights. And in fact, you know, they were putting people in free speech zones. It was looking like the Gestapo out there. This needs to be held These people need to be held accountable. Either we live in America or we live in North Korea. Either, you know, we're the land of the free or we're the land of communism and socialism. And that's a choice that people really have to make too. You're seeing these socialists, you know, come out of the woodworks. They're, you know, they're showing you their true colors. Go check out what the, you know, what the Nazis and the communists were into. It was socialism. It's a failed system. It leads to, you know, authoritarianism and dictatorships and FEMA camps, undoubtedly. And all of these Gladio B events, from, you know, the Porton Down attacks in the UK to the Duma attack in Syria to, you know, all the way back to 9/11 and everything in between, these you know, major attacks that have you know, made news around the world were meant to manipulate people so that, you know, the ruling elite could solidify their control of power. And they were going to do so through tyranny, do so through, you know, bureaucracy, and that's what they've been able to do. And now, you know, we're looking at the world, a completely different world, and nobody's living in the America that they grew up in anymore. Things have completely changed. Everything looks completely different. Even our skies are different. Our food is no longer natural. All of a sudden, we're talking about GMOs. You know, where did this stuff come from? Why wasn't this, you know, why didn't we vote on this? Should we replace our natural food with Frankenfood? Why don't we have a discussion about why they're dosing the water with fluoride? You know, they're giving people medical treatment without their consent. You know, this is supposedly for your teeth, like toothpaste, but if you swallow your toothpaste, then, you know, you have to call poison control. There's no logic anymore in what's going on in our country. It's all about tyranny and eugenics. And if people are stupid enough to believe the television, then they deserve the eugenics program delivered by their imperial masters. I mean, that's, you know, that's just the end of it. If you're dumb enough to buy what's on television, then you're dumb enough to buy the McDonald's. You're dumb enough to buy, you know, the Frankenfood and all of the other things that they're using to poison people with consumer products like deodorants and perfumes, and, you know, we could go on and on and on. With that, I think we'll leave it there. Danny Ray, in closing, what else can we say about the world as it turns with this blood moon tonight? Anybody see blood moon and Mars, like, up in the sky looking at you? That's a bad sign. It's awfully red. We'll have to see what happens in the near future. But Danny Ray, in closing, what can we say?
Well, I would have to say that it is a pretty scary time that we live in, but, you know, those who know the Lord, we fear not. I always like to wrap in some sort of Bible verse, and this is what I'll say. Ecclesiastes 32:16 says, "They that fear the Lord shall find judgment and shall kindle justice as a light." So you guys continue shining your light out there. We need justice here in our country in order to have our country back, because the justice system is not just for us. It is for anyone who is within our borders. And there are plenty of treasonous people that really need to be served justice. So continue praying that this is what is found. And we know that God is ultimately in control. And I have faith that we're going to see a lot more of this coming down the pipeline. You guys all have a blessed night. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure having you on, as always. Danny Ray from Righteous Defiance. Be sure to check her out. You can find her posts on our main page, and be sure to like and subscribe to Righteous Defiance. In any case, appreciate everybody tuning into this broadcast. We thought it was worth, you know, focusing on this. I think you can understand why after the presentation, if you've seen this presentation or if you're familiar with all of the Gladio B events. You know, what happened to these WMDs in Iraq. Check out the Chilcot report. The information is out there. What we're saying here is bona fide fact. We have an impeccable record, and this is why people are tuning in to Stranger Than Fiction News, right? We don't show our face. We're not Tom Cruise, right? There's a reason that people tune in. Our record is impeccable. This stuff is out there. Connect the dots, and then tell yourself, you know, ask yourself, why is this war criminal out there at large? Why is Hillary still out there at large? Why was, you know, the entire top brass of the FBI decapitated for corruption? Why was the former director of the CIA, a communist at the height of the Soviet Union and the Cold War? Can we get answers to these questions instead of all of this fluff that they're pushing out there in the mainstream news? Be sure to check out the QAnon reports as well. There's some interesting stuff going on over there, and we were going to cover something about this missile launch. Perhaps we'll talk about it tomorrow. There is some interesting intel over there. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Much love. And if you're listening to this,
you are the resistance.
should be aware of the ongoing censorship of this new purge that's happening. You've probably heard of what's happened to you know, InfoWars and Alex Jones, you know, the blanket collusion between all of the big tech companies to basically censor the truth. But we actually got a notification from Facebook of their intent to unpublish our page. And in fact, they did unpublish our page, and it was reinstated, and we don't know why. But this was what we got 2 days ago. Stranger Than Fiction News has been unpublished for repeatedly posting things, they say, that don't comply with Facebook's terms. You know what it says in Facebook's terms? The truth is not allowed. And as soon as you start publishing the truth, they come after you like the fucking Gestapo. It's unacceptable, it's un-American, and these people should be broken up like AT&T, ladies and gentlemen. Now, as a result of this, we're expecting this page to be, you know, wiped off the face of the internet, you know, at any time. At any time, this page could go black. This is why we're providing links to our Patreon. We're going to be, as soon as this page goes black, we're going to Patreon to rebuild from the ashes and build infrastructure and invest in technology and the technology necessary to live stream from our websites, STF News and STFN Report. So when this page goes black, and undoubtedly it will at some time, when this page goes black, our broadcast will be at Patreon, and it'll be $5 a month, you know, a few cents an episode, so that we can invest in the future. We don't want to, you know, start again from scratch just so that they can pull the rug from underneath us. We're going to invest in the infrastructure. We've been doing this for 5 years pro bono. Our reports reach more people than NBC News. They reach more people than the New York Times. Go check out their pages. They've got 10 million subscribers. We reach more people than they do. They are scared shitless of what we're capable of, and they're willing to, you know, just basically blanket, you know, censor everyone that's conservative and pull us off the internet. And so, you know, we're gonna have to go back and start from scratch, but we're not gonna start on a foundation made of quicksand. We're going to start on a foundation, you know, that's more solid. And the way that we'll get there is by investing in the technology and infrastructure necessary to drive traffic to our websites and have people watch our shows on our websites. And undoubtedly, for the first year after, you know, for the first year after this page becomes unpublished, you know, it'll be $5 a month. And, you know, most people blow $5 a month on stupid shit like coffee, or, you know, $20 a month on Netflix. If you're not willing to pay $5 a month to watch our epic broadcasts, we wish you well at NBC and CNN. But the rest of us will be continuing on a more solid footing, and people have already begun to show their support, and we appreciate each and every one of you that have already subscribed in anticipation of the inevitable. But getting back to this powerful, you know, news report here, Obama linked to the terror rape camp in New Mexico. Siraj Wahhaj, the leader of that terror rape camp in New Mexico that was planning to shoot up some school out there, probably in Albuquerque or somewhere nearby. His direct relation, Siraj Wahhaj Sr., was the keynote speaker at the DNC convention in 2012, and we're providing the links to that so that you can see the Juma of 2012. It was a 2-hour gathering of radicals right there at the DNC convention. Even though other people from the Islam to these people basically leading this this rally or this gathering at the DNC convention. And of course, you know, Obama handpicked Siraj Wahhaj as the keynote speaker for the DNC convention. And of course, it's Siraj Wahhaj that was linked to the 1993 World Trade Center attacks. And Siraj Wahhaj was a known radical in the New York area that was recruiting young black men to basically, you know, shoot up the city streets and to terrorize Americans in their own little, you know, jihad over there. So this is like what we're beginning to unearth, on top of what we've discovered with Islamic Relief, the Sudanese group with links back to Osama bin Laden. The Obama administration, you know, went out of its way to support this group, to fund them to at least to the tune of $200,000 that we know about, probably a lot more, ladies and gentlemen, as well as the revelations that Obama had funded and protected ISIS. And this came out in the, you know, through the Defense Intelligence Agency and FOIA requests from the Pentagon, as well as being confirmed by the president, the current president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. So we have how many sources that link Obama to terrorist organizations? We've got the current president of the United States that says that Obama is a terrorist. We've got the Defense Intelligence Agency that says Obama is a terrorist. We've got the Pentagon FOIA papers that says Obama is a terrorist. We've got this new groundbreaking report that just came out a week ago, and this is splashed all over the mainstream news, that says that Obama was funding a terror group in Sudan called Islamic Relief with links right back to Osama bin Laden. And now we discover that Obama had handpicked Siraj Wahhaj as a keynote speaker at the DNC convention, and Siraj Wahhaj had links back to the first World Trade Center attack in '93, and to Sheikh Rahman and Ramzi Youssef and all of these people out there in New York. So undoubtedly, you know, we've discovered here a huge terror group, a huge terror operation, and Obama is just sitting right in the middle of it. And, you know, what makes this worse is that it looks like the FBI was still standing down and protecting this terror group of Siraj Wahhaj and company out there in the desert in New Mexico. And this is something that people should really be looking at in even more detail. And when it first came out, people were like, oh, well, this is some like radical, you know, person out there from New York. But now that we've discovered the links back to the original World Trade Center bombings and other, you know, terror front groups like CARE and many others. And not only that, but now we know that Linda Sarsour is linked with this Siraj Wahhaj as well. So we have another, you know, DNC headliner, basically, that is linked to this terror group right there from Brooklyn, and nobody should be surprised that she's got the pentagram right behind her, you know, floating behind her while she's giving her radical speeches to all of these pussy hat wearing leftist Luciferians. This is just unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. How much more of this are we going to stand for? And you know, why are these people getting so much? You know, why are they allowed to get so many headlines? Why are they allowed to headline speeches and rallies on behalf of the DNC? Because the DNC really is an anti-Christian organization, and they want to use you know, the Islamic faith as a proxy to fight against Christians. And basically this is what we're seeing here. But look at you know, look at these characters that we know of, their history, their links, and it's all wraps around the DNC, Obama, Hillary, and the like. Not only are these people, you know, Luciferian pedophiles, you know, as we discovered in the WikiLeaks, as we discovered in the NXIVM case out of New York as well, but These people are linked to terror organizations. I mean, they are like the poster child for what should be on America's Most Wanted, but they're not. Instead, they're protected by the FBI. They're endorsed by the DNC. They're embraced by Obama, and the mainstream media is just like turning its back on this whole entire story. And for what purpose? So that America can become, part of the caliphate, or part of some other Luciferian occult organization. I think it's absolutely it's absolutely despicable. The whole thing is despicable, but the evidence is clear. There's no denying what we've uncovered here. We've provided the links in the comments, and there are there's just one after another. And this has been splashed all on Fox News, the National Review, True Pundit, just to name a few. And as the story ripples throughout the internet, undoubtedly it's going to get picked up by even more news organizations. But undoubtedly what we're discovering here is epic, and it should scare the shit out of everybody. Quite honestly, to see the collusion between the President of the United States and this radical terrorist sympathizer, Siraj Wahhaj, and undoubtedly, he's been implicated in the '93 World Trade Center bombing. How do you invite a co-conspirator of the '93 World Trade Center bombing as a keynote speaker, handpick him for the DNC convention for your re-election? How do you do that if you're not a terrorist? How do you do that over the objections of other people in the Islamic community, that are pointing the finger at this guy, saying this guy's a terrorist? He has a huge track record of terrorism, all the way back into the 90s, where he's like recruiting young black men off the streets of New York, trying to arm them with Uzis and submachine guns so that they can go out there and kill as many people as they can in the name of their movement. Now, how does this guy end up being a keynote speaker, handpicked by the President of the United States, Obama, at the time? How does that happen if Obama is not part of this terror network? And of course he is, because now he's been linked to a terror group out there in Sudan, the Islamic Relief, as well as ISIS. I mean, how what's next? You might as well call him Obama bin Laden, and I think many people did. While he was president, because that's exactly what's going on here, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely epic. It's unbelievable, to say the least, to see all of these people being linked back to Obama, back to the DNC. And of course, Debbie Wasserman Schultz has her thing with this situation as well, with the Awan brothers and all of the protection that was going on over there. And that was something that that just went to court recently. They got a sweetheart deal, just like they gave a sweetheart deal to all of Hillary's co-conspirators during that investigation. All of her friends got immunity agreements, and she just basically skated after a real short investigation. They were writing the exoneration letter before they even interviewed her. And look at the contrast between the Hillary investigation and the Trump investigation. In the Hillary investigation, all of Hillary's cohorts got immunity agreements, and she was allowed to walk before they even interviewed her. But in the Trump investigation, they were actually using fake British intelligence. They were planting that in a secret court, and they've extended that investigation for years, and they still have no evidence at all against this president. None. So you see the contrast, you can see the bias. It wasn't just Peter Strzok or Comey or McCabe. Look at Mueller. His whole prosecutorial team is Democrats. There's not one Republican, there's not one conservative there. Not only is it a witch hunt, it's a fucking coup d'etat. And all of these people should be arrested immediately by the military police, brought before a military tribunal for treason, and held in Guantanamo, and perhaps waterboarded, to get all the information, to get all of the co-conspirators in this terror network. And undoubtedly this links right back to Obama. I have no doubt that Obama and Hillary have their part to play in this coup d'etat that's happening right now in the United States of America. It's historic, it's treasonous, And all of these people that are protecting these terrorists, whether it be from Silicon Valley, all of these socialist media platforms, all the way to Washington, D.C., at the DNC headquarters, all of these people should be fucking rounded up and held in Guantanamo for interrogation and brought to trial immediately. And anything else is just waving the white flag. It's just inviting disaster. It's inviting, civil war in this country. And it already looks like Civil War 2.0 out there, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not kid ourselves. Every time there's a Patriot prayer gathering, you've got all of these radicals, these Antifa coming out there dressed like ISIS, waving the communist flag, going out there beating up patriots and Americans. It's unacceptable. And to think that, this is happening while the mainstream media is just focusing on the Russia story, it's unbelievable. You've got these communists waving the communist flag, telling you to worry about the Russians. They must be out of their fucking minds. I'll tell you what the real problem is in this country. It's these terrorists, it's these Luciferians, it's these liberals, these progressives, these Democrats. They're all working together like a bunch of Charlie Manson groupies. And time after time, they've been prosecuting, persecuting, and discriminating against conservatives and patriots in America. We're going to be doing a series on political prisoners in America. There's a ton of them still, rotting in prison as a result of the Obama administration. It's a crime. It's another crime, another example. You thought the IRS going after conservatives was bad. That was just the tip of the iceberg. They were in an all-out war against patriots and Christians. They were listing them as domestic terrorists in MIAC reports and Homeland Security white papers. They were getting ready to shuttle everybody into a FEMA camp or something similar, and who knows what would have happened to Americans, to patriots and Christians had Hillary won the election. And they tried their hardest. They tried their hardest to steal that election. Hillary was the illegitimate candidate for the DNC, for the Democratic Party. She stole the primary away from Bernie Sanders, from the socialist, the comrade. Everybody knows that. She never should have been the candidate for president. But she's undoubtedly responsible for untold, criminal activities, including the murder of Vince Foster. And everybody should go back and look at the Vince Foster case, because 2 days after Vince Foster was killed, Clinton fired his FBI director. What was his name? Director Sessions at the time. No relation to Jeff Sessions, by the way. And these people they were criminals in Little Rock, they were criminals in Arkansas, they were criminals in Washington, D.C., and they're still criminals today. And what is the Department of Justice doing about this? Absolutely nothing. They're as complicit in these crimes as the terrorists and the criminals themselves.